Hello, the doctor is in. The doctor is in on such a glorious day. It has been a glorious day. I see my shirt, got my shirt, got my pearls, and these are the shoes that I had on.
Okay.
Right.
So I'm ready. But we have a great show today, and if you guys are like me, I've been on glued to the television all day, just watching history happen. It's been like an amazing day. We had a really good peaceful transition. I was really worried about what was going to happen today, and DC has been on lockdown, and what a great day. And when I turned the TV off a half an hour ago, he was in his office signing his bills to change everything that's going on. Oh, here comes Dr. Mo. Dr. Mo was a little late. She came into surgery, but she is here now. So, and we have two wonderful breasties. Hey, Mo. Hey, Mo. I was just talking about, we just went live and I just was talking about what a day it's been. And you've been in surgery, but
It's been a day.
Glorious, a glorious day. I was even watching the Ooh La La girls from Howard marching down,
Yeah.
march down the street with the drum line. So
It's been incredible.
It's been an incredible day, And and I have to say the outfit of the day was Michelle Obama.
Oh, you know it. You know
Right.
it. I
Right.
mean, all day, every day,
Right.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
she stole the show, but they all had perfect shoes and like the perfect outfit. But we have two lovely, lovely, beautiful breasties with us today.
Mhm.
Nicole's been on before, Nicole Edgehill, and
Yeah.
my new friend. Actually, I guess you've been my friend since October, right?
Yeah.
Shani, right? Yes, Shani Scott. So, and we're going to talk about divorce.
Well,
A tough topic.
it's true. And I think the statistics surrounding the number of women and men with breast cancer, humans with breast cancer who end up getting divorced, or more, even more apt, I guess, is marital issues, challenges that
Yes,
go
relationship.
relationship issues that go undetected, undiscussed, unaddressed, that then lead to divorce. Those numbers are inadequately accounted for. And so I think, and I hope that by doing this episode, we can shed some light on some of these things and maybe give people some solid advice on how to begin to unpack all of this. Because in addition to having breast cancer, now you've got to deal with, the extra weight of whatever maybe wasn't right in your relationship before, or maybe it was and it wasn't strong enough to withstand, or maybe there's just some things you needed to let go of. I know that you like to say that also. How much weight did you lose?
I lost about 200 pounds.
Yeah.
And I got some cancers out of my life.
200 pounds of was been there,
Right,
and so sometimes we have to do what we need to do for our health, our mental, physical, spiritual well-being, and our lives take divergent paths, and that's okay.
Yeah, and that's okay. And that's
We
okay.
can talk about it.
And also, you know what? When you have little kids, which I think these lovely ladies will talk about, even once you sort of sign those divorce papers, the relationship is still there because you got to deal with the kids. And, I was older, so my kids were grown. But I think we have a whole nother conversation happening because, the person doesn't go away. So
Absolutely
relationship
right.
still has to have another evolution. So why don't I let these beautiful, beautiful breasties introduce themselves, and then we'll kind of get into the conversation.
I
And
love it. Let's hear some stories.
let's hear some stories. So Shane, do you want to go first? Introduce yourself, my friend.
Oh, sure. I'm Shawnee Scott. I work in media. I've done that for 27 years. I think that's my first husband, and I'm never going to divorce that one. That one really takes care of me and my kids. So
Yeah.
he's a good one. But I was diagnosed. I've been in media for 27 years, and I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2016, right after I turned 40. And I had just got divorced in 2015. So, you get divorced in 2015, and I have this nice corporate position in radio, and I'm traveling, taking my kids and my mom with me as a nanny to watch them while I'm working. And then right at my 40th birthday, I get diagnosed with breast cancer.
Mm.
And it was devastating, to say the least. Fortunately, I had my mom as a support system, and I had to lean on my girl's father, which was my ex-husband at the time, but it was rather challenging because he didn't quite understand everything that was going on. Later, some years afterwards, we talked, and I found out that some of it was fear, but you know, even though you were afraid, I was afraid too, and I still had to be a mom, so it was necessary. I ended up doing two lumpectomies, and then December 2017, I had a double mastectomy. I went through mine without doing the chemo or the radiation. They suggested that I do 24 rounds of chemo and 16 rounds of radiation, and that was something that I just flat out refused because of other health issues. When we had my baby girl, I had a stroke 5 days afterwards because they say in delivery I pushed too hard and busted a blood vessel on my brain. So I went home bleeding on the brain. So 5 days later, it turned into um,
Oh my God.
an aneurysm bursting and then me having a stroke. And I also had some heart issues from working too much and not slowing down. So I was like, no, I'm gonna have to pass on the chemo and radiation because I think that will kill me. Um,
How old were you when you had your stroke?
I was 33.
Oh my
I was
God.
33 years old, and
Wow,
Oh
that's
my God.
that was hard because I had to learn how to. Well, I lost my vision, my ability to walk right, speak in complete sentences. It was bad. It was bad. So I had to rehab, but I told myself that okay, because my kids were only at this point like 5, 6, 7 days old and 1 year old. And I was like, listen, God, I had these two girls and I want to run and play with them. I'm not going to be in a wheelchair. This cannot be life. I want to be able to do things with my kids. So I rehabbed hard and stayed positive. I think one reason why I recovered as well as I did from that, no one really explained to me what was going on with me. They didn't say, Miss Scott, you're blind. I just thought I didn't have my contacts on because it was just blurry. I just thought, okay, somebody needs to bring me my contacts to to the hospital and I'll be okay. I learned I couldn't walk because I kept getting into it with my nurse in ICU because I wanted to take a bath. So when I had the stroke, I ended up going into a coma. And so you just laying there. And when I finally came to and woke up, what I remember is this smell. And I remember my cousin was standing on the side of my bed, and I believe my mom was there. And the first thing I remember saying was, I can't believe y'all let me sit up here smelling like this. And my cousin was like, okay, well, she's gonna be okay. Everything's going and that was the only thing I could focus on was this smell. I'm like,
Wow.
no. And the nurse would say, well, we can bring you a little bucket and a sponge. I no, ma'am. I want to take a bath. I want
I
some
need a
clean
bath.
sheets. And when they finally, said, well, okay, we're gonna let you take a shower, and they got me out of the bed, that's when I found out, oh, my legs don't work. So this is why they didn't want to get me out. But I was like, put me in that shower. We give me some pain medicine, something, because my nose is working fine. And this is, I can't do this. We gonna have problems. So, but we recovered. I can walk. I'm speaking in complete sentences. My brain is, I exercise my brain so we don't have those issues. And I try to make sure I don't get upset or yell at anyone because I don't, when I get a headache, it scares me. It's like, oh no, what's going on? But with all of that happening, that's why I was just so adamant about no, I don't want to do the chemo infusion or the radiation. I changed how I ate. We went back to eating because before I would cook every day, 3 times a day. That's how it was. But then I got lazy when I got that corporate job and was just always on the go, on the go, on the go. We were grabbing fast food here, I started working out more. I started taking time for myself. I learned how to cut work off, like the heart issue and the cancer made me learn real quick how to cut work off, how to just say, okay, whatever, we put that to the side. And those are just some of the things that I did. There were other fruits that I included in my diet that I believe attested to, me overcoming breast cancer. And that's what I did. And
Please feel free to share those.
Yeah.
Everybody always wants to know. Absolutely.
Right. People ask
Yes.
all the time, what do you eat?
Mhm.
You know?
So
Yeah.
I started with a fruit called soursop. And the way I found this, I had a gig over in Nassau, and it was weird because I didn't want to go. I was mad because I had breast cancer. I was mad at the world. And I remember that they had sent my ticket and everything. And up until 4 a.m. the morning the plane left, I hadn't packed. And my mom was like, look, just, go over there. I got the girls, enjoy yourself, work, enjoy yourself, and then come back, and then maybe you'll be ready. So I went mad with attitude. And on Sunday, I got up and said, okay, well, I'm gonna go into the town, forgetting that on Sunday, Nassau is closed. There's nothing to do. Everything is closed. But there was this tour guide, and he was like, Miss, let me give you a tour. And I'm like, I know everything here. I come here every year and do the same thing. So I already know everything y'all got. Leave me alone. And he was just like, I just need one more person. And I said, look, I'm not paying. I'll go, but I'm not going to pay because I don't want to. And he said, okay, just come on. And I said, and I'm sitting in the front and I'm going to do the tour. So I had the microphone, as you can tell, I like to talk. So I did the tour. And while we were going, he started sharing his health issues with me, which led me to, tell him, well, yeah, right now I'm battling cancer. And he was like, I got to take you somewhere. So I said, okay, it's people on the van, so I don't think he's going to kidnap me. But he changed the tour, and we went and visited their oncology center there, which was empty, like closed on a Sunday, nobody there. And I was like, wow, y'all don't, you guys don't have to do it 7 days a week. He says, no. And I'm going to take you to a person that can help you. So we went to a place, it's not called a city. I hate to call it a village, but a lady that owns a store called Tasty Teas. And she is actually a tourist spot. So she has this little tea shop, and they sell different teas for different things. But he took me to her. Come to find out, she's a breast cancer survivor. Not breast cancer, she's a cancer survivor. She had pancreatic cancer twice. The first time she did the chemo, and then it came back. The second time she ate this fruit that grows in the Bahamas called soursop. It's also in Mexico. They call it something else. I can't pronounce it, and I'm not going to butcher it up. But she made me 5 ounces of a drink from this fruit, just 5 ounces. And she said, you drink this, you're not going to have to do chemo, and you're not going to have cancer. And when I tell you, I took that cup and threw it back like it was a shot of tequila. Because anything that would, take it away without me having to do chemo, because even though I'm telling the doctors, look, I'm not doing that, in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh man, eventually it might get to that point, and I don't want it to get there. So, and then she packaged me up she turned the soursop into tea leaves. So and that's what at that time you could bring back to the United States, but you could not bring the fruit back itself. So even if I wanted to bring the drink with me, that couldn't get past customs. So she gave me that. I had her number, her email address. She would send me more. And I just started drinking that tea every day. And when I went to my next appointment with my oncologist, I will never forget. She was looking at her computer, and I'm, sitting behind her. She looked at the computer. She looked at me. She looked at the computer. She looked at me, and she said, I don't know what you're doing, but just keep doing whatever you're doing. We don't have to talk about chemo anymore. And I said, good.
God is good.
Next, and she said, well, would you do the mastectomy? I said, yeah. And, while we're at it, just go ahead and take both, because I don't want to come back to see you again. and that's what we did.
Wow.
I thank you for sharing that. I know you seemed a little reluctant at first, because I think people like to draw a really big divide between Eastern and Western medicine and philosophies and holistic therapies and holistic approaches. And I always tell my patients, it's not either or, it's and. Now, are there side effects from holistic medicines? Yes, there are. There can be some toxicities. You have to be careful about things like the dosage, and you have to know how long to take something for, but can there be some benefit as well? And the answer is absolutely. And I think it's a really great testament and a testimony that you are here today and you're able to share these things, So I would advise and counsel that people who are thinking about these to look and do your research, right? To find people who are reputable. Go to Nassau if you got to. But do your research and ask questions. And if you find that your doctors shy away from these conversations, then you might want to push a little harder and probe a little harder, because they may not know every therapy because they're not taught here in the United States. Right. But finding somebody who's willing to partner with you and to look at these different modalities, or at least to not discourage you and to be able to say, you know what, whatever you're doing is working, keep doing it. That's a really great partner in health for you. So kudos to you, and thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Nicole.
Hi, my name is Nicole Edgel, and my breast cancer journey started in October 2019. I turned 40, so kind of like you, Shani. Yeah, turned 40, and at the time, my youngest was 9 months old, so I was breastfeeding, and I noticed I had a lump in my left breast. And I didn't assume it was anything serious. I thought it was like a clogged milk duct. So I called my OB anyway, because my background, I am a doctor, I am a veterinarian. So I don't pacify my health, but I don't freak out either. So when I felt it, I was like, okay, this is new. It doesn't hurt. I can somewhat get my hand around it. I thought maybe, again, a clogged milk duct. So I called my OB. They weren't very concerned at the moment. They said, just treat it as if a clogged milk duct. So I did a couple of days over the weekend, the whole pumping more, baths, showers, trying to see if I could get it loosened up, and breastfeeding my daughter more often. And it just didn't go away. And by over the weekend past, it was getting tender. And so the journey started from there. Pretty much the OB, she felt it. She wasn't too concerned, except for underneath it felt a little attached. And then also, I had my mammogram, led to an ultrasound, led to a biopsy, and that biopsy came back triple negative, stage 2B breast cancer. So that whole journey was kind of a whirlwind. I never thought I would have breast cancer. It didn't run in my family. No one ever talked about it. It was something that I wasn't really checking for. And also, I was breastfeeding my first daughter. I breastfed for a little over 2 years. And then my second, I was breastfeeding her again from day one up until my diagnosis. So I had to go through 5 months of chemo, and that was rough. And after that, I went through a double mastectomy. I just went ahead and did it, and followed by 28 rounds of radiation. Mm-hmm. So I just finished up my radiation in September. So now it's pretty much the side effects of everything. I am glad that the chemo did not affect my heart. That was a concern because I had a history of pericarditis in the past. But it's something definitely that we have to keep following up on to make sure that there's no side effects. So at this time, thankfully, I got a good report recently that my ejection fraction and all that stuff is back to normal. So I'm just praying that it stays normal. But it's hard and it's challenging because in the midst of this, as we probably are going to further talk about, I'm going through a divorce.
Go for it. Keep going on your divorce.
So so it's challenging because in the midst of going through cancer journey and having my double mastectomy, my husband of almost 7 years decided that he's going to push through for divorce. And so I received a notification, pretty much, you got served. Brushing my teeth, I hear the doorbell, I answer, and I think it's about 7 weeks after my double mastectomy. And it's like, you've been served. And so it's just been a journey because
Was he living in the
this whole,
house with you? Was he living in the house with you and he served you papers in your house?
oh yeah, he left. He made sure to leave early that day. He made sure to be out the house that day. He knew I was getting served. He knew exactly that I would be there, you know, and you know, it was a shock, but at the same token, I'm not surprised. Does that make sense? Like, it was a shock because I didn't realize that the person to whom I said I do would do something so cutthroat at the time where I needed the unity of my family the most. And then at the same token, his thought was, you got the double mastectomy, you went through chemo, you got a good pathologic response. So you're free, you know, you're done. Cancer's gone. And it doesn't work like that for us. It's not like you got your tonsils out, you don't have a problem with tonsils anymore.
Right. Right. Never go.
So that's the warped mindset. So his thing is, and you know, I am in a place where I've learned to accept my situation and where I'm at, but it was very selfish because it was my needs not being met to
That's what
drive him to feel like, yeah, drive him to feel like, you know, you're good now, and so you know, you can fend for yourself in a sense, but I still needed radiation, you know, and
You're a stay-at-home mom too.
And a stay-at-home mom. I literally stopped my career. And so it's one of those things of in life, I learned that sometimes you put on a lot of hats that you don't even realize you're putting on. And so I put on the career, then I got married, wife, then I had kids, mom, you know, then I left my career, stay-at-home mom, you know, and even with that, a lot comes into that. You kind of lose the sense of yourself, right? Your identity, because now you're somebody's wife, you're somebody's kids. And then on top of it, being a stay-at-home mom, you don't get the credit that you deserve because they feel like, oh, lucky you get to stay at home. Yeah. Oh, you know, like it's some type of resort retreat that you're on, you know, where I'm at the Waldorf every day. Yeah. And then on top of breastfeeding. So when I got the diagnosis of breast cancer, my whole being even got lost because now my femininity, like, you know, I'm lost 15 pounds, you know, I'm the smallest I've ever been in my life that I can remember. I lost my hair, I lost my eyebrows, my eyelashes, my nails turned black. You know, I lost my womanhood. And then all of a sudden,
you look stunning.
Well, no, but that's the, yeah, those are the things that.
Well, that's how he made you feel. That's how he made you feel. That's not what happened to you.
That's what cancer makes us feel, you know.
Exactly. That's exactly what cancer does. And it makes you feel, but then at the same token, in the midst of that, you know, when it's like going through chemo and everything, you see the manifestations of cancer. You lose your hair, your nail changes and stuff like that, right? When I went through surgery, I physically saw cancer in the flesh by all the scarring. you
Yeah.
know, the removal of myself.
Right.
Then I'm
Right.
seeing the
Right.
devastation.
Right.
It's like you're going through a Cat 5 tornado,
Right.
and then after you had surgery, now you're looking at the devastation and you're standing in the midst of it, scarred and bruised and battered, and like,
Right.
where do I go from here? You know? And then on top of it, pandemic. So that in itself is a whole nother whammy. No one can come with you to the hospital. You can't be there and stuff. And then you have a spouse who's losing their mind uh, even more. And then in detaching. And then on top of it, now it's like,
Yeah.
I'm done with this and this is what you wanted type thing. You know, it's like, I'm going to move on. And so it's just a lot to deal with.
Yeah.
It
But I
is.
know I'm not alone.
You are very much not alone.
Mhm.
And I dare say that, you know, as a cancer surgeon, I tend to always be an optimist, even ridiculously so, in that you have been shown early, you know, in your life that this person wasn't in it for the long haul, you
Yeah.
know, and you hate to have learned it that way, but this person was not in it for better or for worse, you know? And
Yeah.
so it gives you an opportunity to really to heal, to work on yourself, and to try to find those types of connections that are more genuine, because there's some things you won't be able to hide. And so we have to present our most vulnerable selves, you know, after a cancer diagnosis. It's hard because, you know, as a surgeon, we do a lot of neat things these days to try to hide scars and minimize things, and, you know, amazing reconstruction. And I call it putting lipstick on a pig, right? We put a lot of
Right.
lipstick on a pig, to, you know, but how many of your doctors talk to you about, you know, one, if you could keep your nipples, and two, if you'd have sensation, and what does that have to do with your sexuality, and what your current relationship status is like, and do you need a therapist, and all these things, right? Because you're trying to wrap your mind around your diagnosis, chemo, your finances, your family, your kids. And it's so hard to introduce these concepts to start to wrap your mind around what life is going to be like. And so my question for you guys is, did any of your doctors talk to you about intimacy, about sex, sexual dysfunction, about scars and pain, and reasonable expectations?
My surgeon did. My breast cancer surgeon did. I think he did a really good job. I did do a reconstruction, and my options were to do the implant, and then he said, or we could take the fat from your body. I said, oh, you can take this stomach away. And he was like, yeah, and that's, you know, more natural. It'll probably I can't remember the word he used, but it probably, you know, work better because it's your body on your body. So I opted to go that way. And he explained to me that, so from here down to about my belly button, I'm numb. If you put your hand on me, I feel pressure, but I can't say, oh, that's your hand, oh, that's a book. But I can feel the pressure, but there's no feel. I don't know what it is. And like with the nipples, I'm like a Barbie doll, because after he did the first surgery, um, I was in there so long and up under all that anesthesia. He said there was I had something clogged inside, and that's what took so long. And he got it worked out. So he said, well, you have to come back for us to put the nipple on. And I said, well, am I gonna die without it? And he said, no, but you know, you just gonna look like a Barbie doll. I said, well, that's fine. And he said, well, if you decide to, you can get them tattooed on. Or I said, it is, look, if anybody I'm gonna be with at this point, they just gotta accept this. I ain't got time to be trying to look a certain way up under my clothes for you. This is what it is, because there's also that scar, since they took the fat from my stomach, that goes from, you know, hip to hip. And honestly, if I could go back and do it again, I wouldn't have gotten a reconstruction. I would have just been flat chested and bought one of those little bras that you put on where it looks like you have it in your clothes, because the recovery, you know, is, I don't see how people do plastic surgery after, you know, going through that. I was just like, I don't like this. I mean, now I don't have to, when I work out, don't have to work out as hard, because the fat that they take from your stomach is from your belly button down. So that part that we're always trying to work after we have kids, it's gone. So hallelujah, thank you, Jesus. You know, but
Wow.
like after going through that, I started appreciating my body a whole lot more, because I remember one of my friends that I've worked with in radio for 20, I've known him for about 20 years. He and his wife invited me to do this 545-mile bike ride with them from San Francisco to LA for HIV and AIDS. And he was like, Shawnee, you know, you ought to come do it, because his wife went through the same thing I went through. And he said, you know, after Sherry got on, she, at the end of the ride, it made her feel so different. You know, it made her feel so much better. And but we went out, you know, riding on one of these bikes, you know, I can't remember what kind of bikes they're called, but your shoes have to click into these bikes. So it's not just a bike where you just put your foot on the pedal. Well, I fell in the middle of the street with cars coming, and this bike is attached to me because I can't get my foot out of it. But when I fell, and this is after surgery, it felt like everything in my body just shifted with this cut. I thought I had, you know, busted back open or something. So it, for me, that part of it was traumatized. That's when I got scared, but I didn't. I mean, they put me together. He put me back together good. I haven't had any issues, but in hindsight, instead of because some of that was vanity, you know, because I got my I had enough fat to make my stomach on my chest. That's what I tell people. I don't have breasts. This is my stomach up here. But I was able to get it the size that I wanted, because I was always an A cup. So, you know, now I'm a nice little C. But if I could go back and do it again, I wouldn't have. And in that department, no, you don't. There's no feeling. There's
So
no feeling.
that's what
You feel
affects your
nothing.
relationships too, you know. I think you know, I have the Barbie doll thing too, and I really like it better. So I was always trying to hide my nipples, you
And
know.
it's different for everybody, you know. And I think that when you look at the statistics, 80% of men diagnosed with prostate cancer, for example, are counseled about sexual dysfunction and about their body dysmorphism and about erectile dysfunction, about all those things from the diagnosis, from the
Right.
beginning. And it is so, I think we have to look at how we approach breast cancer and change the dialogue and change the conversation. And I get that it's hard because it's cancer. And you know, you're worried about your life, you're worried about your family, your children, all these things. But I think having those conversations with people, with women, about how you're going to feel, even if you only do a lumpectomy, right? And then we give you this pill and it makes your vagina dry, right? I can't tell you the number of women who are having challenges with vaginal pain, with vaginal dryness, and things that their doctors don't talk to them about that influence the quality of their relationships, you know. And that's something that I think we definitely need to do a better job around. Mhm.
Yeah, so I
Can I
think you're making a really good point, Mo, that too, that you know, not only are there these physical challenges that are real, they're
Mhm.
real physical challenges, but then the whole emotional state of just having cancer and just dealing with the cancer. And then you have to deal with the emotions around your body image and you know how you feel about yourself, how you look to other people. And then you have to deal with the emotions of a relationship. Like, you know, in the scheme of your life, what comes first? I mean, you know, clearly getting rid of the cancer does, but you know, when you have to start thinking about all the emotional stuff, you know, that you have to unpack just to look in the mirror every day and make yourself feel okay, it's all, you know, it's a lot. It's a lot. And then, you know, not having a supportive partner is really hard.
I think if you don't, if I can speak on, I think that for me personally, sex during cancer was rough. It was challenging because I'm trying to choose my words
Mm.
because I just want to be real.
You can say anything
Say
here.
what
You
you
are
think.
among family and
Say
friends,
it.
and there isn't anything you couldn't say right now.
Right.
Yeah, I think maybe I'm not the only one that I was having sex to please my husband.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
It wasn't something that I wanted. It wasn't something I desired. It wasn't something that I needed. trying to be intimate at the time of going through cancer, especially chemo, when your hair is falling out and all these changes and stuff. I still don't have a period, you know.
Right.
Chemo sent me into premenopausal state to where I am in the menopause state. I spoke to my oncologist and she said I'm gonna never have a period again because I haven't had one in over a year now. So that was a complexity of itself. Hot flashes, hormone off, on top of your emotional roller coaster that you're going with because you have cancer. And the huge thing that's in front of your face is, am I going to die?
Mhm.
So the whole want to be sexually aroused was not for me at the forefront. However, for my husband though, it was. That was a huge challenge because then you have someone feeling not wanted, not desired, feeling like they're not important, not seen because their being, majority of it ties into that sexual desire. And unfortunately, you know, I've heard of women whose husbands strayed, you know, they had affairs, openly or unopenly, you know. In my case, unfortunately, I don't know necessarily if my husband cheated, but he referenced it because he felt like his needs weren't being provided. And it's hard because I think Shani, you mentioned maybe off when we were talking about fear, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I know that was a huge thing for my ex-husband, you know, was the fear of everything, but he wasn't a communicator. He never knew how to communicate. That was a huge issue in our marriage from the very beginning. And so me getting sick, our foundation was already shaking,
Yeah.
almost breaking. So the journey of my disease, it literally caused those little foundation cracks to become
Chasm.
holes.
Yep.
And it just shattered because we could not come together because he did not ask about like, how are you feeling? Like tap in, like financially, oh, we're on point. Oh, we have this bill for chemo, we have this bill for the doctor, but the emotional aspect of how, not just how are you feeling, but how are you doing?
Right. Mm-hmm.
That was something that was completely absent. So I had suffered alone in my journey on the emotional level. So that's another thing for me. If I'm not physically or anything else, and definitely now I'm not emotionally aroused, so it's like, that's not gonna happen. So I found myself as it's a chore that caused more issues. You know, I felt resentful. I felt like, what am I worth? And so it's just hard. It's a lot. It's a lot. And so I
All while you're
think
trying
that,
to focus on saving your life, you know?
Right. Hello. Right.
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a lot. And then on top of it, you know, I found myself showering with my back turned because I didn't want him to see this, you know, because it became one of those psychological things of, is he going to still want me? And I ended up with a divorce.
Mhm.
So I'm sorry for crying because
Mhm.
it's real, you know?
It's real and it's happening now for you too, sweetie. And I so appreciate you even talking
Oh
about
yeah,
it, sharing,
it's
'cause
real, but I would say this. Had I, even though I was wearing so many hats before and all these hats are being taken off now, you know, the wife is gone now, you know, I can't work right now. So my career is still on hold. I'm not the same mom as I was before because I can't be that superwoman as I was before, you know, because your health. I know that God, everybody is purposed. And I feel like this journey may had to go this way for me to become the woman that God called me to be.
Mhm.
Wow. Wow.
And maybe it's not just for me, but I feel like I never knew one, how strong I really was. I knew I was strong. I'm not a weak cookie. You know, I knew I was strong, but I did not know my strength
Yeah.
until going through all this. Now, I'm not on any medications. You know, I talked to some people like, oof, you know, I'm surprised that you're not, you know, like
Xanax, right? Give me.
And
Xanax,
it'd be okay,
Ambien.
it'd be okay if you did need an antidepressant. That would be
Well,
perfectly
yeah.
okay. You know, yeah.
It's a lot. It's
Do you
okay.
have a therapist? Have you or you
I
offer
do,
therapy?
and that's one thing. I was in therapy. I started. My husband at the time, my ex-husband, he wanted us to have marital counseling. It's something that I always put out there for us to do before all of this, and we had a little bit, not really, but we were at a real bad place because he literally started shifting to somebody I didn't even recognize anymore. And I lost hope in the marriage, to be honest. I lost all hope. And like I said, my focus at that point was like, you know what? I got to put this on pause and I got to focus on living. But he wanted us to do a marriage counseling. Horrible idea, ladies, or anybody who going through chemo and stuff. Don't do it. It's added stress that you don't need. And I don't know, for me, I could not resolve issues like that. So I think it was 2 sessions. By the second session, I said, I'm trying to fight for my effing life. I can't, you know, I literally just had a breakdown because it's like, I cannot focus on issues that are not important right now, you know? If you're not trying to see yourself and change, I cannot, you know, I'm trying to live.
Trying to live. I'm trying to live. I'm trying to be a
Right.
mom, trying to take care of your kids. I'm just trying to live.
I'm trying to
Get through the day.
survive.
Mhm.
And so at that point, I said, forget the marriage counseling. I'm going to see a counselor for myself.
Yeah.
And so I started seeing a counselor for me. And I continued. It went from every week to now we do every 2 weeks because of finances. But every week I would see him on, you know, telemedicine on my phone every week. And that's a lifesaver. It really is, because you need to be able to talk. It's a lot. You cannot deal with all of this journey. Cancer by itself is one thing, but cancer, kids, wife, finances, it's just a lot. Pandemic, it's a lot to deal with. And so I am thankful that I did institute that. And I think that should be not just for the person going through it medically, but for their spouse, caregivers.
Everybody. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Can
and
I
you
pose
guys,
a
even though you're doing the divorce thing, you're still having to deal with these men because of your kids. Your kids are young, right? So it's like, even though you're divorced, they don't go away. Like I was, you know, my kids were grown, so I could kind of really separate myself. But that, you know, they don't go away, and especially even financially, they're still in your life. You know, how do you deal with all that?
Ooh, well, for my situation, it was very rough because their dad wouldn't pay child support. It was, you know, I don't have it, I can't help you. And like, you know, I had to stop working. So my girls went from this lifestyle of us being able to do whatever we wanted to do. As much as I remember when they were about 5 and 6, they said, well, mommy, they told me in February, mommy, for spring break, when we go on spring break, we want to go to the Bahamas too. Cause they, they would hear me go, say, okay, mommy's going. So I said, okay. And it's done. Okay, mommy has to go to Vegas for this, but we want to go too. And, that wasn't anything that I planned, but okay, I could make it happen at the last minute. From that to, okay, we're not going on vacation at all, or we can't just go to the mall and buy you whatever you want. So it was hard, and I didn't want them to, they really didn't care at the end of it all. You know what I figured out about kids? They don't care about all that stuff. They just want you. So once I figured that out, then I focused more on making sure that I was here, because I had, had my life insurance policy. I had everything in place in the event that I wasn't here, but I wanted to fight to be here. And when I would ask their dad for, can you come pick him up, or the financial help, it was always, a brick wall. And then since when we were married, he had girlfriends, and, we divorced. Now he just tell me about the girlfriends. Okay. He's more forthcoming with it. So that was always an issue. These other women, it's like, well, you took this woman to go get something to eat. You don't think your kids need to eat too? Do I need to dress them up? Do we need to get dressed up and, put on a hoochie outfit, and then maybe you'll take them to get something to eat? What needs to happen, sir? So it was hard. And then the kids love their dad.
Yeah.
So that's a whole nother, dynamic. And with my kids, I'm very, I don't sugarcoat anything. When they were born, I talked to them. They never got the baby talk. I just talked to them, which is probably why they are the way they are now. And I would not include them necessarily in our business, but if they ask, well, why didn't daddy do this? At first I'd be like, well, okay, well, you call them, because they had their own cell phones. Once we split, the girls had their cell phone, so he could call them, because I don't need you calling my phone and it's causing a problem between you and one of your girlfriends, and now they're calling me, because that was our issue, and I don't want to talk to these people, and they shouldn't have my number in the first place. But eventually the girls, they wanted to know more. Once they realized, okay, daddy is not being forthcoming, mommy, he's not telling us the truth, so what is it? So I had a conversation with them. We've even had times where me and their dad sit down and have these conversations so they can understand. And I tell people, because they're like, well, you do such a good job with your ex-husband. And I said, well, yeah, our relationship is like that because of me. Because if I reacted how I'm really thinking in my head, then we would be the typical family that is split up. And when I tell people, even though we're divorced, we're still a family, because there's 2 girls involved. There's 2 boys involved. He has 2 sons that I grew up with them. His son, our marriage, his sons were 5 and 8, 5 and 9 when we got together. So from 5 and 9, I've watched them grow up, go through high school. And my stepsons they'll tell you now, we have 2 moms. They still call me to this day. We still do things as a family. So yeah, their dad is like always there. Even when he remarried, he's remarried now. And the wife was having a hard time understanding the dynamic of it. And I think people get to a point to where they're so accustomed to the drama that when there's peace, they don't know how to handle that. It's, you still want him. I'm like, girl, I divorced him. He didn't leave me. Let's be clear. Now, if I told him he could come back, he would. But you got him.
He has shown all his character, his colors, everything. This horrible experience has shown you both.
Yeah. And when you get sick, he's gonna do like your husband. When we weren't married when I went through cancer, but with the first baby that I was pregnant with, because my oldest daughter is my second child. I lost my first child, but I had a hard pregnancy, the first one. And I will never forget, he said, well, and I couldn't have sex. I didn't feel like having sex. I'm trying to, carry a baby and make sure this baby makes it. And he was like, well, you're not supplying my needs and this is not fair. And I should be able to have this. You're my wife. I mean, girl, just this whole long list of stuff. And I did the same thing. I remember the day, decided, okay, I'm going to give in and do this chore.
Mhm.
And the next day I had to go in for them to look at the baby, and my baby was dead. And I was so mad. It took me about 3 years to finally get over that with him, even after I had my other two, because I had them back to back. So for about 3 years, I was angry. And I'll be transparent. I called him a murderer. I told him if I could get you put in jail and if I could try you, I would, because that is the most selfish thing. And you would think that I felt like, okay, after we lost this child and you saw what kind of pressure you put on me because of what you wanted, that some things would change. And no, it didn't. It stayed the same. So because people ask, and I mean, even he's like, you divorced me because I cheated on you. It wasn't because you cheated on me. It's just because you're so disrespectful with it. You're so disrespectful with it. I would have been willing to try to work through it, because I understand as a wife there were some things that I wasn't doing that I understand as a man you need. But when it got to be that disrespectful, for every woman you are fooling with is calling me on my phone. They know where I work. They know my business. They know too much about me and my children. I work in broadcasting. Imagine your husband's side chick calling you while you're on the air, or showing up at an event while you're working. But I have to remain calm. I can't go Malcolm X and MLK on them. Those are two streets that
Ooh,
meet.
so
And
the stress thing is real with cancer, man. I really, I believe that my cancer came from stress. But I was married 30 years, but
I
and
got a question.
hard.
And my question, because I know we're getting ready to round out to the top of the hour, but it's always thinking about how to make things better for patients, right? And so my question for all of you is, what could things have looked like that might have influenced your journey a little bit differently? Either from your diagnosis, from your support services, the healthcare perspective, first and foremost, and by healthcare, I mean your total wellness, not just your surgery or your chemo, your radiation, but what could your cancer journey have looked like differently that might have helped you to grapple with some of these things and be able to address some of these things in real time? Because I heard you say, Nicole, that couples therapy wasn't for you at that time, and so when we think about how to help couples and how to help people get through their diagnosis and get through their surgery and their chemo and their radiation and just all of these things, are there things your health system could have done that would have maybe given you some tools?
Yeah, I definitely think the perception of what the disease looks like, it's not like a cookie cutter for everybody, and what you're going to go through and the side effects that you may have or you may not have. I think that my ex-husband had the false perception of looking through the mirror of what he's seen personally before with a family member of breast cancer disease. It's much different from what his then wife was going to face. So I think that was one, the education that she may not be able to get up and just right after chemo be back to normal, that the progression of chemo, the more you get it, the more it affects your body.
It's
So
cumulative. Yeah, it's
it's cumulative. So the first 2 weeks is not going to be the same, the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and etc. So that expectation. And then too, that even with sex, and Dr. Monique, you asked about, was it even talked about? It was not even talked about. It was literally a form that you fill out that says, how's your libido? Do you have sexual, arousal or, or not, it was very non-specific, and it wasn't even discussed. So
Sadly, most
that's
places don't even have
huge.
a form. Most places don't even have a questionnaire about it.
Yeah, and I mean, it was just a
making so
questionnaire.
many- Yeah.
Yeah, and you
Well-
fill it out. And so the false perception for my ex-husband at the time was, oh, well, some people, I was told some people, you know, they get chemo, they go right back to work the next day. They drive themselves back and forth to chemo, you know, yeah, you're gonna lose your hair and stuff like that, but you know, just kind of like, suck it up, champ, you know, keep it moving, stay positive. You know, it's like, you know, the whole thing of even, like I said, going through waves like a roller coaster. That's how I felt. Some days I was really up, I'm gonna beat this, I'm gonna fight, Some days I'm like, take me, Jesus, you know, I'm holding on by a thread, you know, and then some days I'm just numb. I have no emotion. And so I think like a social worker to provide insight at the very beginning, not just give information, but just kind of like, how are you feeling today? How, you know, how are your, even with the husband, you know, how is he feeling? Because literally he was like, in my aspect, looking back, kind of like a walking corpse, you know, no emotion there, but not there, you know? And so I just think that just maybe those things would be helpful. And then encouraging people to have a counselor. Counselor's not for everybody, but you can't go through this by yourself. You know, there's no way in hell you can go through any of this without getting it out of you, being able to talk it out somehow, rationalize it with someone. And then, like I said, too, for me, I'm a strong belief in Lord God Almighty. I know for certainty that if I didn't have him in my life, I would not be here. So I would say those that are faced with challenges, it all starts on your knees, especially with your mate. It has to be both going through this, because sometimes you may not be the nicest person, you know, going through cancer, and you may not be the most upbeat. So it really takes a selfless approach. And I think that should be, especially with caregivers, is like, they're going to be going through a lot. So you have to, like, they matter. You have to put your focus on them and be selfless. It sounds bad, but that's kind of what I would say, is just be there for them, to listen and to help them, the people who are going through it.
And what I heard you
Yeah.
say, just to recap, was that one, there needs to be a discussion about expectations, about your physical and psychological and sexual needs and limitations or reasonable expectations at every point in your journey. I heard you say that you would like to have addressed your personal well-being, mental, spiritual, etc., but then also your caregiver and your partner as two separate things, right? Not just as, okay, you guys need to work it out together, but you got to work through your stuff, and then that partner needs to work through their stuff, and then you guys can come together and maybe be able to work through it together, right? And so
Yes.
looking at how we talk to caregivers, not as an afterthought, maybe, is something that we can do a little bit differently too.
Yep, you know, Mo, also, if you think about it, when you're going through, we're educated every day because we're Googling, we're trying to figure it out, we're seeking information. And so, and people give us information. I still have a box of books I never read that people gave me about cancer, right? So we're sort of in that mode of like trying to learn and try to figure this out. But our spouses aren't necessarily in that mode, right? So it may be something that we need to almost have like the training program of how to be a husband to a breastie. Like, what are the things that they need to know? And I think that's true for caregivers. You know, if all of a sudden, you know, not everybody can be a caregiver. I know that, you know, from dealing with my parents and stuff. So when, you know, they're automatically sort of thrown into this role that they probably may not be cut out for. So, you know, and they don't really have a choice about. So what do they need to do? Maybe that's say, you know what, this is not my lane. And maybe they take a different, we need to get a caregiver because I can't do this job for you because it doesn't work for me. You know what I mean? And so I do think that they need to be educated about what we're going through, what we're feeling. We can't just assume that they're going to feel what we feel and get what we get. And I know, I've been married for 30 years. I was a breadwinner. My ex-husband was worried about who's going to pay the mortgage. Like if you can't work, because I paid the mortgage. So,
And afraid to admit it. Shani,
Right.
what are your thoughts on this?
yeah.
My oncologist, my team did a really good job. However, that was the fourth team that I got to. I went through a lot of doctors in the beginning and oncologists because I would get into it with them. I was mad. I was mad at the world and they weren't saying what I wanted to hear. And I remember one of the last ones said, well, you're not going to find an oncologist to say what you want them to say. But my biggest issue with them was I felt like they weren't listening to me and what, my concerns were. They were just pushing this on me. And it's like, you have to do it. But the team that I have now, they were very good with explaining side effects to all the medicines, because there's one medicine that my oncologist talked about, putting me on the one that dries you up. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I'm young. I can still get pregnant by a millionaire and have a millionaire baby. And so, she laughed it off. Well, I mean, but I was like, don't take that from me. And she's really good at finding other ways to make sure I get what I need, and explaining to me, hey, listen, Miss Scott, this is what needs to really happen. You don't have to do it, but this is what it is. I think for me, where it went different is I refuse to accept the diagnosis. So when people ask me, I remember the first time Ricky asked me, well, what kind of breast cancer did you have? And I paused. I said, I don't know, because I refused to even learn. Once they said breast cancer, stage 2, and then all this other stuff, I just blocked it out. I was like, no, I'm gonna give it 1 year. It can only stay in my body 1 year. And if it, and it has to be gone, period. So a lot of it I wouldn't take in. So they suggested that I go to the group, and I went, and it didn't go well. It didn't go well. And it was because of my attitude. I was so upset. So I remember going, and there was a group there that was selling cupcakes for breast cancer research. And the lady was like, do you want to buy a cupcake? I said, ma'am, for $5. If I buy that cupcake, everything better be cured in my body. High blood pressure, cancer, it all better be gone. I'm not paying for your $5 cupcake. So I was that patient. And then in the group, when, it's time to introduce yourself, and I was like, listen, I don't want to sit up here and kumbaya, but y'all don't want to hear no sad stories. Do you want to talk about living? I'll talk. If not, I need to leave.
All right, let me ask you this though. How much of that was denial, would you say, in retrospect? And
I would say it's a lot, because it wasn't until closer to the end of 2020 that I actually came to a point in life where I was like, okay, Shawnee, this is what it is. And I stopped being mad, and I actually, accepted it. And I don't know what happened on that day, but one day it just happened. I don't know if it's because some of my other friends were diagnosed, and, I watched them and I understood what they were going through, because we have one friend that just pulled away from us. He was diagnosed with prostate cancer. He has a family, his wife, they have twins, and then he has older kids from a previous relationship. And we've watched him. He's not the same person that he was. And I've had to explain to my other friends, it's like, look, after he had the surgery, that didn't mean that everything was over. And, he's back to himself. I said he might be mad for a little while. It looks like he's living life, because I see him traveling and doing things that he wouldn't normally do. I said, so you just got to let him go through this process and understand. And for me, I don't know what happened, but one day I woke up and I was just like, okay, I'm going to stop being mad at the world. It's not the world's fault. It's not even my fault. It's just, this was my journey, and I got to just take it.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, Ricky, you get the last word on this one.
Whew. You know, I mean, at the end of the day, you got some more cancers out of your life. At the end of the day, you know, you weren't probably in the right relationships. I know my marriage was bad before I got cancer, so cancer just made it worse. But the way I look at it is, you know, you're taking stress out of your life, you're taking cancers out of your life, and you just got to figure out how to keep it moving and live your best life every day, you know, and know that this person wasn't the right person for you, and the right person will love your scars, will kiss your scars, will love you for who you are, and you guys are badasses. You know, look what you've been through, and you know, I think, you know, we get stronger, because we are badasses. Look, we survived cancer, and we're powerful and bold, and you know, and now you just say how you feel a little more openly than you used to, right? Like my mother calls them frogs coming out of my mouth, right? But everything comes out because, you know, you are a badass, and I think you have to walk in it and know who you are, and know and leverage your strength. As you said, Nicole, we're strong, and you are strong. So know that, you know, you just lost a cancer you didn't need, and keep it moving, and somebody will come
Cancer's
along,
It's a bulldozer, isn't it? It's a bulldozer that creates a path that you never wanted to take,
right?
but it often shows you that road that you need to be on.
Yeah.
And so, you know, Nicole, I hope you are encouraged. And just like you said, I think, you know, you are just getting started down this road, but sometimes everybody can't come along with you on a journey, you know? Like
Right.
there's some people that's meant to come along with you and meant to travel that road with you. And there's some places that you're going to go that God's going to take you that these people weren't right for. You know, same thing for you, Shawnee. There's you, girl. I'm excited to read your books. I am excited to hear the
Right.
stories that you will tell and share and illuminate for women and for men about all of these things. You know, and like this is just the beginning of so much in
And
this year and beyond.
your girls are watching your strength,
Yeah, they are.
seeing your
And
strength.
they're watching how you handle this. They're watching your optimism, Shiny. They're watching your refusal to accept what is in front of you. You know, that's kind of called faith a little bit too, right?
Mhm.
Mhm.
You know, it's the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of stuff not seen. You didn't see these things. What's in front of you is something totally different. And you choose to believe and operate in a different lane altogether. Right. And with sass and class and jokes and humor and anger and all these things, because this is what's real. People are feeling this stuff, you know, every single day. And they don't have anybody who says the things that you're saying and validating it. And so I think it's so wonderful. And same thing for you, Nicole. Like lots of women are suffering in silence. They're having miserable sex before a cancer diagnosis, and it's even worse afterwards because you didn't love your body beforehand. And then so go put a pink cape on and run down the street now and you know, rock your pink and rock your scars and all that. It's not quite like that.
Mhm.
You know, and I think we have to be careful around how the imaging and the marketing of breast cancer sometimes, because everybody's journey is so very different and personal. But whatever you're doing, your strength just shines through. It really does, and I'm excited for your journey.
You're beautiful. You're beautiful.
Mhm.
And
So
can
Mo,
I?
on February 24th, we're actually going to do a show on husbands that wanted to support their wives. And actually I had a couple of husbands come to me and say, okay, well, what should I do? How do I deal with this? How can I help her? So, you know, those are the men we'll need to find for you guys and to work on that, right?
Paul, what were you gonna say?
No, I was just going to say, just real quick, you asked the question, Dr. Monique, on how do you deal with, you know, your ex-husband. My aunt told me something that was very impactful. She said, Jesus died for him too. And that is helping me to see him and trying to see him through the lens of Christ, that this person is probably broken. And, you know, and then also he is my children's father.
Yeah,
Um,
and you won't go away.
and they love him,
I love
which they should. So that is helping me to love him the way God wants me to love him.
Yeah. And
And
I'll
hold
tell
thy
you
tongue.
something. You know,
Yeah.
I got a lot of criticism. I was criticized a lot for how I handled my ex-husband. I didn't argue. I didn't keep up a lot of drama. And I remember there was a time that he needed me financially. And if I could help, I helped. With whatever he needed, I always did whatever, because at the end of the day, it's the girl's dad and they love their dad. So if one parent is down, then your kids are going to be affected. So you don't want that. So no matter what it was, no matter how much I wanted to cuss him out, I always did the right thing. And I feel that that's what kept me blessed and kept me going, because he makes a whole lot of way more money than I make. And imagine that, the big 6-figure person asking the little 6-figure person who has nothing at this point, no income. Can you help me with this? This is what's going on. And I think that's what has carried me through. And it's hard, but girl, hang in there. Don't turn into a real housewife on them. Just be nice, bite your tongue and pray for him. You always do what's right, no matter how wrong he is. Because at the end of the day, when those kids get older, they're going to ask the questions and they'll start seeing. They'll see and they know. But it's not for us to, put something in their head. They figured out.
They see it. They all see it. It comes out in the wash.
Yep, and your faith too.
Yeah. When they go low, you go high. But it all comes out in the wash.
I gotta ask the question: how can people reach you if you would like to be reached? One, for advice, for other speaking engagements, for support, for offering encouragement or wisdom, for following on social media. How can folks reach both of you?
I can be reached at Shawnee Scott on all platforms, or Media Room 360. Media Room 360 is my company. They can either handle. They can go there and find me, and I'm very transparent. So if you reach out to me with a question, I'm going to give you a real answer. Be prepared for the answer.
Be careful what you ask for.
Well, I finally have an Instagram and a Twitter, but it's Nikki, NICKY D on Instagram and Twitter, and Facebook, Nicole Edgel. You can find me there.
Oh, love it. I'm Dr. Monique Gary on all social media outlets: the Facebook, the Twitter, the LinkedIn, the YouTube, what else? I'm not on the Clubhouse yet, but I guess I'll get on that. That's another story. And Ricky?
And Ricky Dove on Twitter and Instagram, or Touch BBCA. Reach out to us, and if you have a topic you're interested in, we're talking about everything. So text us, tweet us, whatever. You guys are such a blessing. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Well,
for having
thank you
us.
for having me. And Shawnee, it was a pleasure meeting you.
Yeah.
It was nice meeting you too.
And seeing you again, Dr. Monique.
Good to see you too. Thank you to all of our sponsors. And we hope this is relatable, reliable, and real. That's what we set out to do every single Wednesday night. So please join us next Wednesday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, because the doctor is in.
The doctor is in.
Yep.
Resty love. Resty love. Thanks, you guys. Resty love. Resty love. Take care, everyone, and celebrate this great day.
Yes.
Got my pink chucks on.
Yeah. See my shoes, Mo?
I love those. I've been wearing pink chucks for 5 years, and now I got a reason in honor of
Right. I know.
Shout out to all my AKAs.
Yeah, shout out to we're gonna have a new day. It's awesome. Yeah.
Yes.
So blessings to all.
Take care.
Bye.
Take care. Thank you.